Hello, welcome back to Inform New Hampshire. My name's Rich Merritt. Co-hosting today is Pat Murphy. Before we get into the show, I wanted to, as I usually do, mention Jerry DeLemus, who still sits in jail, an innocent man after 2.5 years. Actually, I believe I did the countdown and I forget what it was. 134 weeks, I believe. 134 weeks, maybe I'm off a week or so. But 134 weeks this man's in jail, and they got him in jail for 87 months. Was it 78 months, 87 months, I forget.
Oh, he's not part of the Clinton Foundation, so what do you expect?
Yeah.
Doesn't have that immunity.
That says it all right there. Anyway, keep Jerry and Sue in your prayers, please. And I understand that Sue is running for a House seat out in Rochester, so if you're in that area, please vote for her. She's a good woman. Yeah. Secondly, I'd like to ask you to support the National Liberty Alliance. I know I say this all the time, but one of the main things that they're trying to do, which we desperately need in this country, is to educate the sheriffs. The sheriff, maybe you don't think about this, but the sheriff is the only the only elected law enforcement officer in the country, in the United States. Not the FBI, not the marshal's office, none of them. Just the sheriffs. There's a reason for that. Their job is to protect the rights of the people. That's their primary function, is to protect us. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, or our property. It's one and the same, actually. So I'd like you to go to nationallibertyalliance.org, become a member, and if you can, either send money or donate your time. One way or another, they'll be grateful to get either. But they need to raise a lot of money to print these books and to mail these books. And again, I made a mistake by saying we needed 3,133 copies. We don't. We need 20 copies. I hope I get this right this week. We need 20 copies for 3,133 counties. So if you do the math, there's quite a few there. And they want to have some other ones so that they can send them to police departments, counties, commissioners. A lot of people need to understand the law. Now, before we get into the show, I wanted to bring up a couple, I'll say minor points, major points. Number one, this show is designed to reach people. And I think internally my main goal is to reach the baby boomers, because there's more of them than there are any other generation that's alive today. And we are the ones who are going to get anything done because we know what's going on. Our children are busy raising kids, don't have the time to understand the problem. They've been dumbed down. If you got grandchildren, they're being dumbed down even more.
Right.
It's incumbent upon us to stand, okay? And I, for one, and I'm speaking for Pat, I know, we're ready to stand. And I don't mean with a gun, with a book, with our minds, with education. But we're ready to stand and take a stand to get our country back. So with that, I wanted to say, in January of 1961, a Republican, President Eisenhower, gave a speech warning us about the military-industrial complex. They didn't know better that back then, or maybe they knew more, I don't really know, but that was the deep state, New World Order, whatever you want to call them, Illuminati. Give it whatever name you want, but that's what it was. 3 short months later, in April of 1961, a Democrat, President Kennedy, warned us of the same damn thing, only he called it a conspiracy. He went into a lot more detail than what Eisenhower did. In 1981, a Republican, Reagan, talked about the same thing, only he used the term just and unjust taxes. He was referring mostly to the taxes that you're paying on your wages, your time and your labor is what it is. There's no law in America saying you have to pay a tax on your time and labor. None. Zero. Nada. But we all do it because they'll kick your door down, they'll put you in jail. There's something wrong with that system because you don't have to pay it. You do have to pay an income tax, and the word income is corporate taxes. It's got nothing to do with your time and your labor. Someone who comes in and takes a chunk of your time and your labor, that's called slavery, because there's nothing more precious that you have than time. It's limited on this planet. That's why I'm saying this to the baby boomers. Make use of the time. But 3 presidents have given us a warning, and we chose to ignore it. Now, I get that in 1961, I was just a little tyke. I was a little guy, didn't know any better, didn't know what the hell he was talking about. But our parents ignored it. When Reagan was saying it, we ignored it. Now, there's one other guy saying it. This is 4 presidents that are saying it. And I hear on the news, I'm not going to mention their names, but as far as I'm concerned, these people are fools. These people on TV, the people on TV. They're talking about all these conservatives, they're dreaming up the deep state, the boogeyman, someone's in the closet. They're going on and on and on. And I'm sitting there going, 4 presidents have warned us about this. 4 presidents. What do you think? They're talking about, Cinderella with the golden slipper?
Yeah.
Come on. Now, I would like you to pay close attention. We're going to show a 2-minute clip, just 2 minutes. And I hope it brings home the point, because he's talking to America about who can solve the problem, the same as the 3 presidents that preceded him. And before we get started, I just want to say the constitutions, well, let's go with New Hampshire. The Constitution in New Hampshire was ratified in 1783. It was ratified by the people, not by a legislature, the courts, a governor, by the people. They shot it down twice. The 3rd time they ratified it. That means it's the people's law. It's not the government's law, it's the people's law. They stole it from us. So our presidents are warning us, saying, hey, if you don't wake up, they're going to take it. Well, I won't say it's too late, but they've taken it. It's incumbent upon us to take it back because they stole it from us. With that, please pay attention. 2 minutes, that's all this clip is. And listen to the words carefully. Thank you.
Our movement is about replacing a failed and corrupt political establishment with a new government controlled by you, the American people. The establishment has trillions of dollars at stake in this election. For those who control the levers of power in Washington, and for the global special interest, they partner with these people that don't have your good in mind. The political establishment that is trying to stop us is the same group responsible for our disastrous trade deals, massive illegal immigration, and economic and foreign policies that have bled our country dry. The political establishment has brought about the destruction of our factories and our jobs as they flee to Mexico, China, and other countries all around the world. It's a global power structure that is responsible for the economic decisions that have robbed our working class, stripped our country of its wealth, and put that money into the pockets of a handful of large corporations and political entities. The only thing that can stop this corrupt machine is you. The only force strong enough to save our country is us. The only people brave enough to vote out this corrupt establishment is you, the American people. I'm doing this for the people and for the movement, and we will take back this country for you, and we will make America great again.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
Okay, I hope the big point was made and caught by everybody. Only the people can save America. Only the people, meaning us, because it's our law, it's our country. Think about this just for a minute, reflect on it. I know how minor it might sound coming from my mouth, but really, this is your life. It's your family, it's your property, it's your children. Everything belongs to you, or us. The government, it belongs to us, okay, the corrupt government that we have. The problem is they've stolen it all. They've stolen our law. The corporations have stolen all the resources on planet Earth. with the aid of the government. They've pilfered trillions and trillions of dollars worldwide. It's time for the people of America to stand up and say enough is enough and stop being afraid. And I'm not talking about, I say this all the time, I'm not talking about violence. I'm talking about demanding, this is your country, stand up and demand it. Stop the garbage from these people. And we'll see how this whole thing plays out. But I know it's easy for me to talk about. If anybody listening in New Hampshire got an invitation from me to go to a meeting this Sunday, I urge you to please attend. It's very important. Thank you.
You need to take them to the court of public opinion right away, and people have to realize that they're in a really critical time in the history of this nation and of the world. Who amongst us would have thought the country would be sink to this level? When we were younger, looking at where we are right now, in debt massively, the level of corruption. It seems like every day we're finding more and more about the expansive size of this all-pervasive corruption in the government. And even we're actually finding layers of government that we didn't know even existed, like SES. You talked about SES. Donald Trump has waged a very gutsy, intelligent counter-revolution against a revolution that's taken place against this nation's institutions for decades, since we were kids. And I think the thing that people have to understand is he certainly can't do it alone. And you need to begin education at home. And a lot of the education, if you look at Trump, a lot of the education has to be, it's moral in nature. When you look at he initiated his foreign policy, he went to Poland, and you could see the terrific power and energy of the Polish people in standing up to defend themselves and their families and their children, and their refusal to participate in some of the socially degenerative aspects that you see infiltrating all the nations in the West,
Yeah, it's so easy to cave in.
And you watch how it spread throughout the west of Europe, down into Hungary, with Orban now saying we need to re-Christianize Europe and bring back classical Europe, meaning Western civilization. Basically, the concept that you examine your life, going back to the ancient Greeks, the Oracle of Delphi, know thyself, that you're rational, and you appreciate the human being, and you appreciate beauty and things like this, because all of the institutions have been under assault for so long. If anybody watched the hearings on Kavanaugh, that's an example of how low things have gone in the country. Here we've got a guy I can't imagine anybody being as clean as he is. He's as clean as a whistle. I mean, they're looking for him. If he spit a piece of bubble gum out an automobile window, they'd be having it on video.
I don't think they catch it.
If they could.
Yeah.
But it's it's the whole thing with the left. They need to start to educate people in the entire history of the left, going back, not just to the 1960s, where a lot of people think a lot of this rot came from, but actually a few hundred years back to the French Revolution, the history of false accusation. I'll give you a good example of one good example historically of that, because I tend to speak to things historically because that's my interest. But if you look at the trial of Marie Antoinette, she's not as unpopular as a lot of people would say, or in the history books say, and to ensure that she would be murdered. For about 6 months, they worked on her 7-year-old son, the Dauphin, for about 6 months. It came time for the trial. He went out publicly and stated he had forced sexual relations with his mother and with his aunt. So there's a whole history of it that goes all the way up through leftist movements, all the way up through the Soviet Union as a prime example. And the stuff you're watching right now is exactly, positively, out of what we had in formerly the former Soviet Union. Show trials, false accusations, denunciations, things of that nature. So it's insinuated itself into the culture.
Well, the deep state, Pat, correct me if I'm wrong here, but my interpretation of it is that the deep state is, the only thing they're afraid of is losing what they have, but more importantly, going to prison or worse.
Oh, they're being exposed, and they're trying to hide the truth, the reality of what they actually are. I mean, a classic case in point is if you look at this what's going on at Google with this young engineer, James Damore, who was fired after going to one of these, mandatory diversity sessions. And then when they were asked their opinion later on, and he tweeted in-house, because he thought it was the thing to do, and saying, I think that there probably are differences between men and women that we should be able to discuss. And that was taboo. He wasn't supposed to say that. And he was accused of fostering old gender stereotypes. And here's a kid that had a tremendous work record. I mean, when you look at his reviews, they actually say superb on them. And then the next thing you know, he's out of a job. So you focus on that institution, and you look at the culture they're creating, internally, and it's unbelievable. I pulled up a video, and it showed their CFO, Ruth Porfer or something like that. But it was after Hillary Clinton had lost, and she's at a meeting with a lot of people, and she's standing up giving a speech, and she's just about crying that Hillary's lost. And I'm saying to myself, this whole culture here, within that institution, it's something that's come up through education, through the years, to produce that type of mindset. It's just absolutely unbelievable.
Well, if the only requirement for being president is to be a female, or is to be black, or is to be white, or is to be anything, is just that, to limit it to one thing, then we're all in trouble.
They're giving bonuses in that company for people to get up and give speeches against traditional behavior, traditional norms. For instance, we know white males are under attack everywhere, so it's that type of a thing. And if you look at the head of Google, who's gone to China now, he's flown to China. He's actively engaged in creating a system in China called Dragonfly, where the Chinese Communist Party is able to locate dissidents, and that's through somehow connecting, wherever they browse, it's probably connected somehow to their phones, so their identity can be discovered. So you're actively participating in sending people to their deaths. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, did you see, I don't know if you saw this or not, Pat, but on somebody's floating around Facebook, they have a video where this girl is interviewing this young kid. He looks like he might be 30 years old at that, and he works for the government. And she's asking him about what he does for his job, and he basically says, well, I slow down the government. We want to get rid of the free market and bring in socialism. He's openly saying this.
Unbelievable.
Now, it's on a hidden camera.
Right.
But he says, well, everybody in there knows about it. He says management doesn't, but everybody else does. We're all for it.
That's
The
unbelievable.
destruction of it. We're paying these people to destroy the government or the system that we have. The government's already destroyed, but we're paying them to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, this wasn't just one young kid. It was several that they interviewed, and the same thing, same message. So I was flabbergasted, saying, "Are you kidding me? This kid's, I bet you he still got his job." That's the sad part.
Yeah. Well, they're creating an atmosphere where there is no free speech. As they say, these there's not even a discussion on anything like sexual differences or things like that. They might as well all start calling each other comrade. That's it. I mean, they're creating a culture where you turn in the other guy, as you had in dictatorships. Like say communist Cuba. It's like Tony Montana. Say you're stinking Chivato. Or East Germany, Spitzel. The Spitzels would turn you in. Or the Russian army, every 10th man is NKVD, is a spy. Or even the systems you had in the Soviet Union, where you would have a denunciation box. It's a metal box on a street corner outside the factory. Somebody says something wrong, you fill that out, you can denounce that individual. If he said that the radios we make really suck. So the next thing you know, it's Article 58. Is revolutionary activity against the state, and you're then they're creating that whole atmosphere, and they're actively doing that inside of China. Which, if you look at China in history, especially since October '49, they have got to be the worst country in the history of the world for what they have done, for the amount of people they have murdered and continue to murder.
Oh yeah, we did. Well, you weren't here, but the show we did a couple of weeks ago demonstrated that, even harvesting the body parts.
Oh yeah, it's big money. They murder from 60 to 100,000 people a year. They estimate, mostly Gao Fong, They're getting 160,000 bucks for a heart, 170 for lungs, about 60 grand for a kidney. A pancreas, I'm not sure how much it goes for. And the thing is, with some of this, those people are killed on the operating table, and the recipient is in the next room. And my understanding is some of it is barely without even anesthesia. So it would serve two purposes. It's a huge cash cow for them, but it serves to inject horrific fear into that entire nation, in that people will understand this is what they're capable of doing if you step out of line. They have a new system going into effect in 2020. It's their credit system, where you get 1,000 points. You start off with 1,000 points, and you get caught jaywalking, that's so many points off the 1,000, or you're late for work, you lose so many points. You get attached with a dissident group, and you're going to lose your credit rating completely. You'll be blacklisted. You won't have a job. You can't get medical care. Your family probably be punished. It's a horrific system. They use that. They're tying that in with hundreds of millions of facial recognition cameras. So,
Yeah, but that's all that does.
unbelievable.
It just makes sure that you're a good robot.
Yeah, that's what you're supposed to be, is a good robot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. China is it's you know, when you look at the history of the last century, Russia has come to terms and admitted, you know, to a great degree, that communism was evil and was an evil thing. And you could see that. I mean, it's mandatory that you read the Gulag Archipelago in their equivalent of high school now, since Putin came in. But you don't have anything like that in China. And if you look at Xi Jinping now, he's just announced that he's president for life. And at their last Congress meeting, they'll have a meeting every 5 years with about 2,300 members. There's about 9, I think, at the top that are central to everything. But he came right out, and he said, we're Marxist, and you need to understand that's not changing. And over again, we are Marxist, and that's not changing, and we're going to become stronger and stronger. And then you look at what they're doing economically. We've created that economic monster. They're not a military monster yet. They are an economic monster. And you look at their plans to penetrate, you know, all of Europe, Africa, Asia, with their Belt and Road Initiative to build these, you know, 6 massive highways that are just huge, and then a string of maritime ports. They are a force to be reckoned with.
Oh, yeah. They will be.
They're-
They will be. I mean, you can't grow the way they've been growing since, well, the last 20 years.
Yeah.
Since the so-called free trade agreements and put them into the World Trade Organization. Because I know prior to that, I can tell you that they don't have copyright laws.
Yeah.
You used to be able to, this is in the early 90s, you used to be able to go online to a Chinese website and you could watch a movie made in America
Yeah.
before it came out.
Yeah.
They were pirating these things.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, in their business expansion, they look for the most corrupt countries they are, and they target the most corrupt individuals. They'll give people loans that they know they can't repay, and then in the foreclosure agreements, they have all the minerals. They've gained strategic ports like that. They're actually building undersea submarine bases. They are on Hainan Island, so you won't even see their submarine fleets. So they're on a full force course to dominate things, to dominate the world. And when you look at the nature of the highways that they're building, I mean, the substrate is just massive. It's you know, it's beyond. You say the Autobahn in the 30s when the German Hitler was creating work for the Germans, so those became invasion routes into Eastern Europe and Russia.
Yeah.
But you look at these, and they're bigger than that by a whole bunch, and they're headed right towards Europe, Africa, throughout Asia, etc.
Well, I remember 15 or 20 years ago reading about China building these massive apartments all over the place.
Yeah,
Massive apartments.
yeah,
Just to find out that they laid empty. They couldn't get people to rent them.
Yeah,
Probably because they couldn't afford it. I don't know the reasons.
that's 12 to 24 a year. They're medium-sized cities,
Yeah.
and you find them all over China. And what it looks like is they're very nervous about hanging on to power, because you have rumblings within the People's Liberation Army. You have a lot of people that are retired that live on $1.90 a day. That's their pension. Older guys from the PLA, and they're none too happy. And you'll get a society where that wealth is concentrated. It's mostly in the coastal regions with elites, and you get the vast amount of people that are still living, barely. I mean, it's better than it was by a long shot, but they're still living at a poverty type level. So those cities will supply an area where they can take people from the countryside and force them into that city. As they develop, then they become the labor force for those manufacturing facilities. But it's a way to keep control over all of the people, because if they had problems, they know, as in their own history, that their revolutionary activity took place in the countryside. So it's a cap on those people. It's a control on them.
What is the count in Russia, China? 1.4 billion people?
Yeah, 1.4 billion.
Yeah.
You get about 30 million that have males that have no chance of having a wife. That's a volatile element because they've killed so many through their
genocide,
one child abortion type thing, it was a horrific thing the way that it's done. It's just really ghastly. People need to stand up against all of that stuff, particularly the thing with Falun and forced organ harvesting. So.
Yeah, the Falun, by the way, it's my understanding that they're simply an association. It's a lifestyle, is all it is. It's they meditate, they exercise together. It's very tame and very mild, from what I understand. Anyway, am I wrong about that, Pat? Or?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. They do the same thing now with. I'm sure that Eric Schmidt is helping them to locate the Muslim population, because they have concentration camps that are enormous for their Muslim population. So there's tough situation. And you just have to call a spade a spade.
Yeah. Well, they've been dumbing us down. I imagine how long they've been dumbing their own people down, because we're pretty dense when it comes to what we should know. And it's not that we're stupid. It's that our own government has been letting us down, and we haven't held them to the fire.
They're loaded with spies here. They probably had 20, 25,000 spies. You look on these college campuses, these Confucian centers are all geared towards coming in and eventually determining the nature of curriculum and brainwashing, because they're literally in all the countries of the world. The United States is a primary target.
Yeah. Well, I want to say this as we're closing. The National Liberty Alliance has it on their website, nationallibertyalliance.org. Only the people can save America. Just like Trump told you, Kennedy told you, Reagan told you, and Eisenhower told you. So let's all listen, and let's all do something. It's our government, it's our country, it's our life. When you're gone, you baby boomers out there, you're out of the picture. You can't do anything. Now's the time to do it. Thank you for listening, and please share this. Thank you, Pat Murphy.